We're all waiting with breathless anticipation. 1 minute to 6. Good evening, everybody. It is just about 6 o'clock. Welcome. This is the regular June council meeting. It's June 10th, and it is now 6 p.m. Laurie, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Diablo.
Here.
Vice Mayor Stone.
Here.
Councilmember Brandon.
Here.
Councilmember Prince.
Here.
Councilmember Young.
Here.
Thank you. Laurie Brandon has asked Pastor Paul to give the invocation this evening. Pastor Paul.
I received a text from Laura this afternoon asking me if I would open in prayer tonight. This morning, 11:30, down in Royal Palm Beach at a public supermarket, there was a tragic killing of a mother and her little toddler child. That's all the information we have so far. And so I'd like to read a very familiar and a very comforting psalm, if I may, before we begin our meeting in prayer. King David writes, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters, and he restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. And yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever and ever and ever." Heavenly Father, all of us in this chamber tonight, pause at the outset of our meeting to try to express words from our heart, Father, for this grieving family, this tragic, senseless killing of a mother and her little toddler child in Royal Palm Beach. And Lord, we all tonight pray for the families. I pray for the Royal Palm Beach Police Department, Fire Department, and medical people, and those at the hospital, all that would be around this family tonight. Father, we just don't have words to express such a horrible thing. But thank you, Father, we can, for a few moments tonight, just pause and ask for your blessing, God, and your peace and your comfort for this grieving family. Thank you, Father, for this village, and that we can pause for just a moment to pray like this. And I pray for the rest of our meeting tonight, Father, for those who sit on the dais before us, for the leadership we provided for our village, Father, for all the wisdom and knowledge you've given to them. We pray for them tonight, for all of our residents. Lord, thank you for this incredible place to live. For all of our law enforcement, our fire and rescue, Father, police department, we're just so thankful for such a safe place to live. And for all of our employees, Father, every one of them, I just give you thanks for them all. Pray for our country tonight, Heavenly Father. Pray for our men and women in uniform throughout this country, throughout this world, keeping us safe and providing peace that we can even have a meeting like this tonight. So again, God, we just ask your special blessing upon this family, God. Comfort them as only you can do. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. And we shall stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Closer to home, we are very blessed to have an outstanding police and fire rescue team that tends and takes care of our citizens in our times of need. And I believe, Chief Trube, you have some awards tonight for several of your officers.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Vice Mayor, Mr. Manager, Village Attorney, and Village Clerk. I'm fortunate to lead really a great group of people in the Fire Rescue Department who were tasked last year for actually a little over a year with trying to lead the fight here against COVID-19. We, unfortunately, over the last 2 years have not really been able to have an awards banquet. So we did sit down 3 times, have luncheons with each of the shifts, and give out the awards. I'm not going to talk about all of those people, though, even though they've all earned the awards that they received. What I'd like to do is single out one, what I think is a very special firefighter for the actions that he's taken over the course of the last 15 months. I'm going to ask firefighter Andre Dodd and his family, go ahead and join me up here at the podium. The early days of COVID, everybody remembers back in March or April of 2020 when everybody started to really become aware of it. Well, I can tell you the first conversation that Andre and I had was in January, where we said, hey, what do you know about coronavirus? And we discussed it. And within short order, we decided that, well, we probably better start buying some PPE, some masks, some hand sanitizer, and so forth. So we did that. We did that in February. We started putting a report together that we could give to senior staff that same month. It became very apparent to me early on that COVID, especially in the beginning, would be fought on really 3 fronts: logistics, infection control, both areas that firefighter Dodd excels in, and the third being public information. Now, you can't do public information without infection control because everything that goes out has to be accurate. So some of the things that firefighter Dodd did early on was find the PPE. Where many departments struggled to find PPE, I can tell you by the end of April, we were sitting on about a year's supply. That does not happen by accident. That happens through hard work. The review of CDC guidelines, and these things change by the hour, right? And the development of SOPs to protect our personnel as well as to protect all of the village employees. We would write SOPs and they'd go back and forth and we'd go, okay, it looks good, let's put it out. And it'd go out at 12 o'clock and by 2 o'clock it had changed again and we'd be rewriting. This went on for months. Infection control. Normally the infection control officer deals with a handful of emergencies throughout the year. Somebody gets a needle stick, gets in some bodily fluid, and we have to go through a process. In this case, I can tell you firefighter Dodd probably investigated somewhere in the neighborhood of 120 to 150 different investigations here in the village of employees that may have had COVID, may not have had COVID, but were otherwise following the protocol. Again, a protocol that we developed over time. During the investigation, one of the things you have to do is contact tracing to see where else this is going to go. How many of our employees are we going to put out of work? And in the beginning, this would have been out of work for 14 days. At the fire department, if I'd have lost a shift, that would have cost us in the neighborhood of $30,000 just to cover the overtime. Not to mention the wear and tear on the remaining 14 or 15 firefighters that I would have had left. So you could say that infection control was critical, absolutely critical to our operation, not just fire rescue, but every single department. Can you imagine for a minute all of finance being wiped out for 2 weeks? Can you imagine for a minute all of water utilities being wiped out for 2 weeks? Andre Dodd was the point man to help prevent those types of things from happening. The follow-up after contact tracing with the employees' families and with the village staff here involved decontamination of office spaces, workspaces, and homes. We made a decision early on after consulting with each other that we thought the best way to fight it was to be aggressive. If somebody in the household had it, we'd go to the house, we'd decon the whole house, we'd offer up advice on how to separate from each other, we'd offer up advice on how to take care of the sick person, and we would do the best we can to stop COVID in its tracks in that household. Because it doesn't do the Village of Tequesta any good, or the employee for that matter, if it goes from the infected employee to the wife or husband to the kids. You're still without the employee, and that employee is still in serious trouble. So we decided we'd fight it. The other thing is that firefighter Dodd did over the course of 15 months, locating of COVID test sites. Well, you get tested anywhere you want now, but early on there was one site, then there was 2 sites. Some sites offered PCR tests, some were offering antibody test, some were offering antigen test. Now by now, most of you probably know what all those are. Early on, nobody knew what those were. We had to research it. We had to make sure that the test was right for what we were looking to do. The same thing happened with vaccines. Early on, only a few people had vaccines. Well, somebody has to know how to store the vaccine. We did run a vaccination site here a couple of times. Let me tell you that it's critical that you get it right, and you get it right the first time. If you don't get it right the first time, nobody gives you vaccine again, because the stuff was that valuable to all of us. Firefighter Dodd is the one that did most of the research on that. He's the one that I trusted to go get the vaccine, and this was not going to be turned over to just anybody. It had to be turned over, properly stored. They had to sign for it, code for it, the whole 9 yards. We were able to do that. We were able to successfully run 2 vaccination sites, and we really could have run more very easily. We had a plan in place to ramp this up where we could have probably done 200 to 300 people a day if they had asked us to do it. We did COVID training. We ran 4 or 5 different, I would call them panels, where we set up Zoom conference calls. Andre Dodd again was part of that, answering questions about infection control, answering questions about COVID-19, and answering questions of anything that came up about the vaccine, anything the employees wanted in an attempt to educate. It's been a long 15 months. I can tell you this man answered the phone every time I called. He truly my right hand throughout the entire process. I wouldn't have gotten through it without him, and I want to make sure everybody understands that. You'll notice I said firefighter Dodd. Leaders are seen long before they are promoted. If I could promote Andre Dodd right now, I would promote him as high as I could get him. In fact, there's times last year I would have said you could have my job. So that's how I truly feel. Truly a brother in arms, so to speak. And in this case, the fight was against COVID. So see if I hit the right button here. And so for his actions over the last 15 months, we have awarded him not only Paramedic of the Year, but we have also awarded him the Fire Chief's Commendation for actions taken above and beyond the call of duty, literally for 15 months of 7 days a week work and on-call status. So without any further ado, thank you very much. I think that's it. There's the congratulations thing. So I'll get better at this, Laurie, I promise. You want me to leave it up here?
Thank you, Chief. My family actually had an experience with firefighter Dodd because shift A had to come out to the building we were in where my daughter was stuck in an elevator and had to find a way to get her out, which they did, and my daughter was extremely happy to be out of that little box. So thank you for everything you've done. Thank you for all your service. Much appreciated. Okay, we actually have a request for a second presentation. I'm going to let the Vice Mayor introduce this.
Yes, can Amy from Oceana has a presentation to give, so.
Hey everybody, Amy Angelo from Oceana Coffee. We are headquartered here in the Village of Tequesta. We've got a couple of locations, and I've been working with the Village Council and a small group of business owners in the village to really kick off this Shop VOT program again this summer. So just a couple of little updates and a couple things that I'm super proud of, and how this is going this time is, you know, so much more organized. I think the word is getting out to a lot more of the village residents. So I can say, sorry, I wish I had some pretty pictures and things to show you. The flyers that have been designed this time are beautiful. We now have a logo for Shop VOT, which is amazing. It's going on all of the flyers, the letters that go out. I can say that we have a lot more village business participation this time. It's not requiring us to go and door knock and ask people for donations. They are willingly giving them and reaching out to us. So we have more than $1,400 in donated items this time. And we have a great system of actually tracking those receipts now. So I can say the first week we had a little over 600. The count today was over $2,000, over $2,200. So it's a lot of the same people, which I noticed. So there's a little bit of work to do in getting the word out to everyone. But I think seeing that jump, I know we calculated about $10,000 last time through the program. So I think that message, people are listening, they're paying attention, the business owners are getting involved. And I think that is probably the biggest part of this, is that the business owners are working together. You know, I can say we had, you know, it was a team of 2 in December. Now it's a team of 5. So I'm hoping that the next time we do this, we'll have a team of 9 or 10 people that really want to push this forward. So I just wanted to give you guys an update. I think it's going great. I really appreciate the help. And I know the businesses in our community are going to be very happy with the results and just that newfound sense of, you know, collaboration. So thank you.
Thank you, Amy. I think, you know, we're moving out of COVID. Obviously, the economy is recovering, and I think the village residents did a great job of supporting the local businesses during that time, but it's probably even more important now as we come out that we support our local businesses, again, who provide, you know, the services and goods that so many of us need. So thank you for all the work you've done. I know Kyle's part of that committee, and you guys have done a great job in moving this forward.
Yeah, I just want to add a couple things. It's real important to know that you don't have to be a Village of Tequesta resident to participate. And so please pass the word to all your friends that, hey, come up here and shop local, and they have a chance of winning as well. But definitely let your neighbors know, because a lot of people don't realize that they're shopping locally and they have a chance to win a very nice prize. So.
Yeah, it's more than $1,000 at this point, or it's $1,000 for the grand prize. The most important thing I forgot to mention is that is one of the ways we're getting this word, the word out, is by sharing these posts. So the village is making some really nice posts about what the prizes are, what the grand prize includes. So if you guys are on Instagram and Facebook, just take a couple of minutes to share those posts. Use the hashtag ShopVOT, hashtag ShopWhereYouLive. That's going to help us really build that sense of shopping local here in the village.
Thank you very much. So I was so excited to get to the presentations that I forgot to do the approval of the agenda. So do we, and we do have one change. There's a request, I know, to move up Hendrick from its location as the last item of the evening, I believe, number 22, to move it up to the head of new business. So it would become number 14. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, moving on then. Yes. Communications from citizens. I believe we've got a couple of cards, Laurie. Oh, sorry. Do I have a motion on the consent agenda? Any
I'll make a
changes?
motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, communications from citizens. I know, Laurie, you've got a couple of cards.
I have one card for citizen comments. It's Robert Shaw regarding fertilizer ordinance.
Good evening, all. Bob Shaw, 198 Gulfview. So recently I had a chance to view a video presentation by the Marine Resources Council on the health of the Indian River Lagoon. The council's health ratings were based on the amount of seagrass habitat and the levels of nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus in the water. Besides poor poor water quality and dramatic seagrass loss, the report detailed that manatees have died at unprecedented levels this year. These are all directly related, as high nutrient levels leads to algal growth, which leads to loss of seagrass, due to lack of sunlight, which leads to the starvation of manatees that feed on the seagrass. While the southern end of the IRL in Tequesta fared better than areas to the north, it amplifies how important surviving areas of seagrass are for the dwindling manatee population. When it comes to water quality in the Waxahachie River, the River District's Riverkeeper program analyzes water quality on a monthly basis. Looking back over the last few years, their data shows that nutrient levels spike in the summer months. And finally, there's the cyanobacteria algal blooms that we're all aware of happening north and south of us. So my ask to you is to keep spreading the word on our rainy season fertilizer ban, which went into effect on June 1st. Laurie's done a great job this week in getting the message out, but I think we need to not only keep disseminating information to the public, but to also inform applicator businesses as well. I was shown a bill recently from a True Green Tequesta customer, which details the application this week of 20 pounds of fertilizer containing nitrogen. The customer contacted the company to complain, but it fell on deaf ears. A few weeks ago, I forwarded along to you a few suggestions for getting the word out. Those included posting at the 3 village sign banner locations, getting some form of notice or letter to the applicator businesses, and just throwing it out there, asking Rocky's Ace Hardware to post something around their fertilizer display. Something similar was done at Home Depot last year at the bequest of Jupiter, town of Jupiter. The good news is that most everyone that is made aware of this ordinance are in support of it. I also want to make mention of a trial seagrass planting program for the Waxahachie River. Sponsored by the Jonathan Dickinson Park and the FWC, eelgrass plugs will be installed in the Northwest Fork next year. I think we should do all we can to give this project the best chance of success.
Robert, thank you very much. No other cards? Okay, so now communications from council. Who would like to start this evening?
I don't have anything to say tonight.
All right.
Well, I was going to give you an update of what the EAC talked about, but that was pretty much. Thank you, Bob Shaw.
All right.
No.
Kyle?
I will say something. Last meeting, we had a discussion up here concerning Tequesta Park, and I just wanted to read into the record the Florida State statute, and it's 901252. And the conversation was about, do we have the authority to police the Tequesta Park there on county line? So 901252, the authority to patrol municipality-owned or leased property and the facilities outside municipal limits, taken into custody outside territorial jurisdiction. A duly constituted law enforcement officer employed by the municipality may patrol property and facilities which are owned or leased by the municipality but are outside the jurisdictional limits and of the municipality, and when there are probable cause to believe a person has committed or is committing a violation of state law or of county or municipal ordinance or such property or facilities, may take the person into custody and detain the person in a reasonable manner and for a reasonable time. It goes on a little bit further, but I just really want to make it clear that we do have the ability to patrol and police and enforce all the laws that we have on the books in that area. So
Yeah,
I think that's something that we need to remember.
Yeah, and I concur. I understood that we were limited to ordinance enforcement in that particular situation. So you actually addressed something I was going to say tonight, which was that you were correct. And I have since been corrected as far as what the authority we have in those areas. If we do detain, we do have to take them to Martin County. We can't hold them here in Palm Beach County. But the Vice Mayor was absolutely correct that we do have that authority, which is actually a good thing for us. I just had a couple of things. We have pension board openings. We have 3 of them, 2 on the public safety and 1 on the general employees. So I'm going to ask my fellow council members and anyone who's out here tonight with us or maybe on Zoom, if you know of anyone who has a background in these areas that would like to participate on these boards, please get the word out to them. It would be much appreciated. Somebody asked me, well, how much do I need to know about pension law? The pension boards, their primary responsibility quarter to quarter is really more than financial management. They have a pension attorney. You can learn the pension elements of it as you go over time, but it's really the financial experience that's key, because their primary responsibility is the management of the pension funds. So again, if you've got people that you know of that might have some interest in this area, we are looking, again, for 3 individuals. The other thing I wanted to let the council know is I do have a definitive appointment with Representative Snyder next week. We're going to talk about annexation, grants, earmarks for Tequesta Park, the things that we talked about at the last meeting. I'm still waiting for a confirmation from Senator Powell's office, but hopefully I'll be getting that soon as well. The other thing I did want to make note of is we have a young man with us tonight who is interning with Jeremy and Laurie, Eli Kaufman, and he's, I guess, been on board for about a week and a half, right? So welcome aboard, and I know you're going to learn a lot over the course of the summer from both of these individuals, so welcome. Now we'll move on to standing reports. Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor, Council. Having survived another legislative session, my office is working to put together a legislative memo that targets specific legislation that passed that will specifically impact the village in terms of our codes and operations. We're looking to have that to you later this month. And you know, we're still in the stage where certain bills have been signed, certain bills have not even been presented to the governor yet, so there's still some wait and see to see if they're going to pass or get vetoed or get signed or not signed. However, we are working through that, and we'll have hopefully some useful information in that regard to you later this month. Unless you have any other questions, I will conclude my report with that.
Any questions? Keith, thank you. Jeremy?
The only thing I can add to my reports that you have is we do have a workshop scheduled, budget workshop. It'll be our first look at the budget, June 23rd. So mark your calendars for that.
Okay. Thank you. Chief Medina.
Evening, Mayor, Council, Village Manager, Village Attorney, Village Clerk. Officer Jerry Lynn Palmieri joined the police department with us on Monday. Captain James Pike retired on May 31st officially, so I want to thank everyone who came out and said their goodbyes. He's definitely going to be missed. This month I also spoke at the Jupiter-Tequesta Rotary Club on May 25th. We attended a NORTHCOM meeting, in fact, today to finalize the budget numbers for the upcoming fiscal year. We also presented the awards. Like I said last month, if you recall, we had something planned for the officers. So what we did for the Officer of the Year, Officer William Hoisrat, what we did is we had his parents and his girlfriend at the EOC. He didn't know. We called him off the road and presented the award with his family there. So, you know, we made it kind of personal for him. The manager came out as well. For Civilian of the Year, some of you may know Mike Camper, who lives on Country Club. During the summer with COVID, James Pike was out on the water almost every day, and Mike Camper was right alongside him, you know, helping out. So we thank him for that. For Life Saving Award, Officer Hoisrat once again and Corporal Tim Baldwin were also honored. And then today, along with the manager and the mayor, we presented an award to Tyler Van Vos and Adrian Steiner, both residents of the Village of Tequesta. On April 25th, they had called about a manatee that got caught in the low tide, and they called us along with Jupiter Fish and Wildlife. We went out there and were able to save the manatee. So we actually did a little parade to their house today and presented them with a special recognition on behalf of the PD and the Village of Tequesta, thanking them. As far as Public Safety Team Award, Andre was obviously the person that our staff chose, our officers chose who to honor, and Andre was undoubtedly the clear choice. Just for the month, BLM stats, we had 485 contacts. We had 9 warnings during that time of 56 hours worked, And marine stats for the month of May, we had 263 contacts, 12 vessel stops, 6 warnings, and 2 calls for service. In regards to training, we just had Detective Louis Lopez go to death investigations training, and we also had Sergeant Yildiz and Corporal Jarrell go to DEA traffic stops. Obviously, we have someone detailed out to the DEA, and once again, not only of all the great things that does, but it also opens up to possible training. So that's something that they're looking to do for additional offers. Also, as the manager knows, Detective Loney, who's detailed to the DA, had a phenomenal traffic stop that resulted in the seizure of over $400,000 in cash. So we will be getting a percentage of that. That actually occurred with our relationship with the DA and this Florida Highway Patrol. So Detective Loney and K9 Erica are doing a phenomenal job. That's all I have, unless anyone has any questions.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Chief Drew.
Mr. Mayor, Village Council, try to keep this short. The fire department, again, is kind of trying to extricate itself from COVID and get back into the business of just focusing on fire and rescue. So to that end, all of our firefighters completed their PATs for 2021 successfully. That's actually the physical ability test that they take every year that allows them to continue to work for us. So they're ready to go. Our hydrant testing is mostly completed, probably 80%, and this includes our new GPS feature, which basically allows anybody with a smartphone to see where the hydrants are as close as a GPS can get them. The officers and I have attended many meetings this month. We've made it back to the Fire Chiefs Association meeting, the EMS Providers meeting, the Training Officers meeting, and of course I did attend the Safety Committee meeting as well. Regarding training, we hosted our second water rescue class, Swiftwater 1. That was the 7th, 8th, and 9th. We did that with the assistance from the First Baptist Church and Tequesta Police Department. Tequesta PD has been outstanding with providing us with a boat operator and basically keeping us safe during the class, and I think it's gone very well. Again, this is phase 2. Phase 3 will be in July. Firefighter Weichert is continuing his training as a fire plan reviewer. Our office manager, Tessa McKay, is starting the medical billing program. That should be shortly. Ongoing training with shift personnel. I have 6 firefighters within the first 2 years of employment, which means I have 4 guys basically doing training on engine and or aerial driver training, so that process. And I have 2 now currently starting solo paramedic training, so hopefully within a few months I'll be able to report success on both fronts. Regarding public outreach and fire prevention and other programs, we did Take Your Kid to School Day on May 28th. If you ever get to witness that, it's a great event. The kids are always ecstatic, the crowd's always big, and the people just love it. And it's probably one of the most fun events we do. The awards luncheon, as I mentioned before, we were able to successfully do 3 of them. I did elect to separate them. This was, in my COVID mind, more acceptable than putting every firefighter we had in one spot at one time. So we were able to do that. Unfortunately, we have had in the last just 3 or 4 weeks, 1 firefighter test positive and 1 fire inspector test positive. Both are doing well. The firefighter has returned to duty, so no significant loss of time there. And that is my report, unless there are any questions.
Good question. Thank you, Chief. I just wanted to thank both chiefs again. The event we had today with these 2 young men who saved the manatee, the back to school event, both departments have consistently reached out, to this community to build relationships, and I think that's reflected in the nature of the community's response and support of both of our departments and to the fine work that you guys do. And it's a 2-way street, but you guys make every effort to build that those community relationships, and those efforts and the efforts of your teams are very much appreciated. So, again, thank you both. Thank them all for us. Okay, Mr. Hammond.
All right, good evening. Utilities had certainly a full month. We welcomed in Kathleen Maloney Pollock. She joined our team as an administrative Generalist, she fills an open position that we had, be working underneath Janet, our office manager, as well as spending some time up at the customer service desk. We're implementing a new backflow testing system tracking system this month, where we test customers' backflows rather than mailing in hard copies. We'll now be able to submit those online, and we'll be able to track those through that. Both our pickup trucks that were ordered this fiscal year were delivered. They're getting registered, decaled up, and then the surplus, the vehicles being surplus will be sold at auction, and the revenues returned, or the proceeds returned to the Water Enterprise Fund. Shop VOT flyer went out with the most recent water bill to help provide more awareness to that program going on. On project-related items, work on the Tequesta Drive, Pinetree Drive Stormwater project is complete with the approval earlier of the final adjusting change order. That project will be closed out. Stormwater pipelining, the last section of that, which Jeremy has up there, the last section of piping was lined on Friday. There was, as always, when you're dealing with underground work, a number of surprises that we found, but our team worked well with Hinterland and was able to work through those without and staying within the contingency that was there. Just to give you a little bit of an idea of what that entails, this is the actual installation process. That is a felt liner that's pulled through the pipe. That liner is impregnated with an epoxy or vinyl ester that is cured, and the finished product is actually a new plastic pipe inside the pipe. And Miss Young has next to her there has show and tell for the night, but that's inside there. There's actually a piece of both the before and after. There's a couple before and after photos of sections of the pipe. To date, there's since last summer, there's been around a mile of stormwater piping that has been lined around the village. On phase 1 of the Beach Road water main project, Department of Health cleared that for use. It was put into service last week. There are 2 additional fire hydrants being added on early next week. Those were requested by the Sea Glass project to serve that project. The cost of those is being funded 100% by the developer on that, and then once that's wrapped up, the old pipe will be abandoned. Phase 2 of that project, finishing up the replacements on Beach Road. Survey's complete, design is underway. That's on schedule to have design and permitting completed this summer, with construction taking place next fiscal year. On the Upper Florida well rehabilitation, we met with the design consultant and Johnson Davis, an underground contractor, on site this week to coordinate the piping modifications that are needed ahead of that rehabilitation work. Design and permitting is underway on that, and on schedule and planned to complete that work in fiscal year 2022. And last project-related item is well number 19 replacement. Certainly that's under design. This month we'll get the first review submittal from the consultant, with design and permitting being completed this summer and construction next fiscal year. With that, any questions? Or?
Thank you, Matt. Any questions?
I got a question concerning
Yes,
the portal, the active customers that are actually using the portal. I just received a text that I used too much water yesterday that I set up my own alarm on. So that's why I'm asking. I see that we've got a little over 450 or so, 400-ish active users, and we're getting about 50 a month. Is that pretty consistent, or?
It goes in, we track it every Monday. We get a report on how many active portal users there are. As you monitor it, as we watch it, it really goes in spikes with the outreach that we do. The biggest spikes that we've gotten were related to the 2 bill inserts that we did. The one December, January, and then the one that went out with this bill have been the largest jumps up in users. Right now, with that 400 and some, we're at 8.5% of our customers that are that are active portal users. And looking at other, at least based on from census, that percentage is actually quite a bit higher than most utilities, and we're we're pushing to get 10%. That's our goal, which is substantially higher than most utilities.
Thank you.
Are we finding that some of the people that had issues, that they are signing up, in fact, and actively using that portal at this point? I don't know if you, I know there were some issues when, we implemented the new meters and all the rest, and we had some people that had some rate shock, because maybe the old meter wasn't working properly, or wasn't registering properly. I'm curious if those people are jumping on board with that portal, so that they're able to constantly monitor their water usage.
Some of them are. When we work with the customers who are having some challenges with their water use, that's one of the things that we bring up to them, that everything that we're looking at right now to help them is at their fingertips. In addition to that, we also once a week we go through a leak report and go in on each one of those. Just the highest water used on the leak report, and then we reach out to those customers. We proactively reach out to them individually, give them a call, and let them know that it showed up. We've looked at the hourly flows. Here's what we're seeing, and to let them know before they even get a bill.
Right. Well, I knew your team was monitoring that, in essence, on behalf of the village residents. But I was just curious if, again, those people had had issues, if they, availed themselves to the new tool to be able to, just self-account for their
It has
usage.
been some.
Okay. All right. Anything else? All right. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to the regular agenda, we're going to start with old business, and the first item is an ordinance number 7-21. Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 721, ordinance of the Village Council of the Village of Tequesta, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances at Chapter 78 zoning, Article 9, supplemental regulations, Division 10, occupancy or use of temporary structures, trailers, or vehicles, Section 78-612, other uses, to permit the parking of food truck trailers within village jurisdiction under certain conditions. Also amending Chapter 78 zoning, Article 9, to create an entirely new Division 11 entitled Mobile Food Vendors in order to establish local regulations for mobile food vendors in accordance with Chapter 509 Florida statutes, providing that each and every other section and subsection of Chapter 78 shall remain in full force and effect as previously adopted, providing a conflicts clause, severability clause, authority to codify an effective date, and for other purposes. This is second reading.
This is a public hearing, so it's now open to public comment. Okay, seeing none, it's closed. It's now open for council discussion. Okay, it's closed to council. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Okay, second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, moving on to number 9, ordinance 8-21.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 8-21, ordinance of the Village Council, Village of Tequesta, Florida, amending Chapter 78 zoning, Article 9, supplemental regulations, Division 4, landscaping, by revising Section 78-399, maintenance, subsection D, pesticide management, to provide for updated reference to Florida statutes governing pesticide management, providing that each and every other section and subsection of Chapter 78 shall remain in full force and effect as previously adopted, providing a conflicts clause, severability clause, authority to codify effective date, and for other purposes. This is also second reading.
Okay. And again, it's an ordinance. This is a public hearing, and I believe, Mr. Shaw, you had submitted a comment card on this item.
Bob Shaw, 198 Golfview. So, yeah, at last month's council meeting, I believe council requested of our chair of the EAC committee to prepare a summary of all things pesticide, safety regulations. So I've done so. We reviewed it at our EAC meeting yesterday, and they approved it to supply to you, and I hopefully got it to you today for your consideration and Laurie's possible dissemination to the public. So that's the first point. Second, I want to actually address the ordinance. And again, I've hopefully supplied you with what I'm proposing as a minor change. It's to paragraph 2 of the pesticide management section of our code, which was not revised in the ordinance. As currently written, paragraph 2 addresses weed and feed applications in a somewhat incomplete and possibly inappropriate manner. Since the application of weed and feed products as well as herbicides for weed control is dictated by requirements in the Structural Pest Control Act, as introduced in paragraph 1? Why not properly cite the act and the basic requirements therein? Namely, that all for-hire applications of these products must be performed in accordance with the training, licensure, and/or certification requirements of the act. I added the line herbicides for weed control in the language because after several conversations with Gary Stanford of the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services on this topic, he advised I should address it. He's the environmental manager of the Department of Agriculture, the Licensing and Enforcement Division. He noted that many lawn service people don't know that they must be certified to apply weed killer to landscapes. And I would venture to say many homeowners, or most homeowners, don't know this as well. I think it helps if we include the revised language to paragraph 2 in our codes as it better informs the public. I can tell you from experience that trying to find even the basic information within the Structural Pest Control Act is a daunting task for anyone.
Okay. All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Davis, what are your thoughts on making this change? And
I don't have any objection if the council wanted to make that change. I think it's a change that could be made at second reading. It doesn't change the intent or the scope of what the ordinance does. So if it's the council's desire to make that edit as proposed, the motion to approve would be as amended pursuant to Mr. Shaw's language, and I can prepare that without any trouble.
okay. Do I have a motion? Well, before we go there, council discussion.
Does the change still align with the state statute? Because I thought we were just aligning with the state statute.
It actually references the statute.
Okay. So yeah, fine with that.
Yeah, I think the first version was a little amorphous. This one was to tighten it up a little bit.
Great.
Any other thoughts, comments? Okay. Do I have, somebody would like to make a motion including that change in language?
I'll make a motion to make, with the change of this submissions.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously. Okay, now moving on to number 10. This is ordinance 1021.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 10-21, ordinance of the Village Council, Village of DeQuesta, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances at Chapter 2, Administration by amending Section 2-61, Pension Trust Funds, Exhibit B, Public Safety Officers Pension Trust Fund, adopting revisions to incorporate provisions of the settlement agreement between the Village and Palm Beach County Police Benevolent Association concerning police officers' share plan, amending Section 28, quote, defined contribution component, end quote, providing that each and every other section and subsection of Chapter 2 shall remain in full force and effect as previously adopted, providing a conflicts clause, severability clause, authority to codify an effective date, and for other purposes. And this is second reading.
Okay. Again, as an ordinance, this is a public hearing. Do I have any comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, it's closed to the public. Council, it's now open for discussion. Everybody good? Okay, so do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Okay, number 11, authorize the village manager to solicit proposals for a corridor project to include US 1, DeQuesta Drive, Old Dixie, and Cypress Drive. We talked about this at the last meeting. It's coming to the council now for discussion and direction and a decision. Who would like to start?
I'm still in favor of looking at other options
Other options meaning?
to solicit it out. Like,
So you're in favor of
Yeah.
the board?
I don't see how it could hurt.
Okay.
Yeah, from my perspective, I really don't want to, when things come our way to make a decision on land, or I kind of want to go through this process first before we, just so that we have a really good, clear vision for the future for DeQuesta. And I think it'd be a great thing to do while we're in the position right now where we don't necessarily have extra funds to put this on the budget for next year, and then have that ability to get to that point and properly allocate accordingly. But I think we should start the process.
Okay.
What would the timeline be for the RFQ? When would it do?
So it'll take us I don't know, a week or two to put together the full package, get it reviewed, and then we'll have to put it out for the proposal for, I believe it's 2 weeks legally, or 2 to 3 weeks, and then we gotta have.
Well, you want to give sufficient time for any proposers to put a package together,
Yeah.
so.
So, a couple weeks for that, so we're probably looking at, I don't know, 45 days maybe before we bring it back to you guys for proposal. But in the meantime, when we put this proposal out, I think we come back to a workshop format, maybe the June 28th workshop, and you guys can decide on the selection committee, how you guys want that to be formulated. It might be part of the steering committee that's, part of this whole process, if you choose to do that. So anyways, long story short, we workshop how we choose who's on that selection committee for the proposals in the meantime, while we're working on the RFP.
Mr. Prince?
Not anything.
Yeah, I think we all agree that there is a need to move forward on this project. As we talked about last time, we already have one project proposed for US 1. We're likely going to probably see some additional activity in that area. And I think it's important that we come together as a community, not just on the council, but with community input, as we've talked about, to provide guidance and direction to any developers who would be looking to come into the village, so that when they come and have an idea as to a project they want to undertake, that we have the consensus of the community as to what form that project should take. Not, in my view, not so defined that it leaves them no room for creativity, but certainly fits the community consensus as to what we'd like to see as we go forward. My only thought, and I agree with you, Vice Mayor, that this would be a budgeted project for next year. My only thought, and I expressed this last time, is I do think with NILSA, we have somebody who is very unique. She's been part of the village for a very long period of time. She understands and knows this village extremely well. The work product, as Mr. Radford alluded to in the last workshop that she put together, was extensive, well thought out, well developed, and anybody else coming in and making a presentation is going to be able to have the benefit of leveraging or seeing her work project. The other thing, and I don't know if everyone in the council is aware of this, but when we go back to the prior manager, when we talk about the comprehensive plan, the prior manager was in favor of just sending a letter to the state saying, hey, our plan's fine, we don't need to do anything. NILSA was the one who really drove hard and said, you know what, that plan is outdated. It really doesn't take into account what's occurred in the development, in terms of development in the village over the last 10, 15 years. And she was the one who really pushed for a full review of that plan. The manager told her, I'm not going to give you any additional money, but if you want to undertake this, you can. And she spent 2 years developing that plan. So from my perspective, I think we have somebody who's exceptionally well qualified. She's got her 6-year degree in architecture. She was a Fulbright scholar, got a Fulbright scholarship to come to this country, master in urban planning. I think we have the right individual who has the right experience that can help us move this forward, and I think she's done an exceptional job of that in the past. So, again, we're not going to make a decision on this, I know, tonight, but when we go into the workshop, I'd at least ask everyone maybe to consider some of the things I've just put forth as we look to maybe move forward with this project, because I do think we have an exceptional individual that we can turn to at this point in time. And I think that would help us move the project through expeditiously, effectively, and I think provide the outcome that we're maybe ultimately all looking for. So, but I would say let's put it on the next workshop and let's discuss it and let's make the determination.
We're going to go ahead and approve, authorize me to put the proposal out, RFP? Is that, because I heard different.
Well, I have to say, I agree with Frank. I think it would always 100% be for an RFQ, because I think we have that due diligence to do so, but I think we did it kind of backwards, and I'm uncomfortable that we asked NILSA to provide the proposal when it's on the street already. I understand that we don't necessarily have to select low bid. Can you maybe explain that process so everyone can hear it? If we do go to RFQ, what that looks like in selecting someone, since her proposal's already on the street?
So the way that an RFQ is you're basing it on the qualifications. So professional services like engineers, like planning services, I mean, it's a very specialized field. You don't necessarily want to take the low bid. You're going to get somebody, I mean, if you can only imagine, I'll use the best example as an engineer. Take a low bid on an engineer, doesn't mean you're going to get the best work out of it. You want to make sure you get somebody that's very qualified. So they'll be submitting their qualifications, their projects, who's working on the team. You know, all those things, you take that into consideration. You can put in the criteria, you can put a price, but it's, you know, it's weighted just like everything else. That is not the only criteria when you do a RFQ. So the proposal that'll be submitted will take all those things into consideration.
Is that basically a point system to where you take qualifications, you get X amount of points, you know, presentation, X amount of points, et cetera, et cetera? Is that the way that works?
Yeah, I mean, that would be typically the way you would do it, is have a weighting system. You know, if you take qualifications, it might be 25% of the grade.
Right.
The cost might only be 5%. You
Right.
know, you can weigh it however you want, but the idea is that you're getting qualifications, not necessarily the low bid on it.
Correct.
We just finished that procedure with selecting the auditor, and it was nice to be part of that group and part of that team. We came up with percentages for what we thought was most important for selecting the auditor. So the scope of the work had the highest amount of how they were going to execute. Price was like 10%, and that, we didn't even know the prices at that time. So it was more, it came together organically, and I think in a very, very good way. So,
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that type of system. It allows you the flexibility to really, in my opinion, choose the correct person or company, you know, for whatever, you know, you're seeking out. I like it a lot.
I never thought that NILSA was never not qualified, but because it's such an important thing for the future of our village, I see no harm in seeking someone else who is either equally qualified or even more. And as far as the presentation that we've seen already being public, I mean, if I was putting together a presentation, I wouldn't copy someone else's. I would put together something with different ideas. And I would hope we would just be able to choose then, rather than just putting all our eggs in one basket without looking at the options. And that's where I stand.
So I think what I'm hearing is we want to go forward with the RFQ. So let's take, we'll tee that up for the next workshop. And,
Well, that would be, so tonight, it's on the agenda to go ahead and put that RFQ together. The only thing that I would tee that up, put that out. The only thing we're going to be talking about at the next workshop would be the selection of that process. So if you approve this item, or you vote on it, you approve it, I'm going to put the RFQ out.
Okay, well, it sounds like that's, so do I have a motion to approve?
I'll motion to approve.
Okay, second?
Second.
All in favor? I'm sorry, Mr. Bradford.
I just wanted to clarify, Tom Bradford, 44 Chestnut Road. In Florida, a request for qualifications, price is not allowed. I mean, you are only looking at qualifications. I think that was, maybe goes to Molly's question. The Competitive Consultants Negotiation Act, if it applies to architects, engineers, land planners, surveyors, etc., this may or may not be.
Does not apply to land planners. It applies to engineers, architects, mappers, and surveyors.
Okay, so how do we know whether architects or an engineering, I mean, we don't know what's going to come in the door, but if it's something that falls under CCNA, and Keith is telling you it's not, then price is not allowed to be. It's the second step after you've ranked the firms, that then you go down the list. If you don't like the price of number one, you move to number two and number three and so forth. But I just wanted to make sure you all knew that.
No, thank you. I appreciate that input. Keith, I think he stated that correctly. Do you agree? In terms of this
project this is not a CCNA project. This is not one of those four specific. This is land. If you're hiring a planner to do land planning work, that's not CCNA.
Okay.
So, I agree with the manager's comments. You may consider price. You don't have to. This would be something that you'd want to consider ultimately in the best interest of the village based on the criteria that you feel are most important. Many times when you do a request for proposals or a request for qualifications, you will, regardless of whether it's CCNA or not, you'll leave price out of the initial piece, select the vendor that you think is best for the village, and then negotiate the contract, whether it's CCNA or not.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, moving on to number 12, authorize the village manager to contract with landscape architect and grant writer to apply for the matching beautification grant. Mr. Allen?
So we also heard this item at the last workshop. There was two pieces to the beautification grant to apply for, and there was one to hire a landscape architect to draw up the plans for kind of a redesign for the corridor project, or not the corridor, but the US 1 beautification, the medians, the entryways, the gateways, and the other part was to apply for a matching beautification grant. And so, you know, typically these are both under my authority, but there is a matching portion to this grant, which is why we have that, you know, in front of you guys. If we decide to move forward, there will be an obligation for a $40,000 match. And so regardless of whether, you know, we apply for the grant or not, if we just want to do this in-house, we'd still have to have somebody draw up some redesign, because we're going to have to submit it to FDOT for approval. So we can't just go, oh, we're going to go in and do it. FDOT has to approve everything that's there. So that's what you have in front of you. I can answer any questions you may have, but I know we talked about this last time in length, so.
Okay, and I think you indicated last time that this has been budgeted for. The application and planning process.
Right, so the landscape architect and the grant writer are budgeted items, and like I said, typically I would just approve these, but because there is a match, and council will have to commit to those matching grants if we get it, that it was worth a discussion.
So I think after the last discussion, Mr. Prince, you said you wanted to chew on this, so I'm going to ask you to start, and then we'll look at everybody else's input.
The areas and stuff that you're talking about spending the money on, I mean, how long would that typically be in place? Is there anything, isn't there some things that are coming up behind this that's going to require those areas to be redone at a later date? Or am I mistaken about that?
So, I mean, if I understand, if we do some, you know, redesign project and we get the community involved and we want to relook at the US 1 corridor, I mean, possibly, you know, when there's redevelopment, there may be some things that get redone or reworked, but those landscape medians and, you know, some of those are outdated, overgrown, you know, need to be cut back. I mean, those have been in place since they redid US 1, and I mean, that was before I got here, 2017-ish. So, I mean, they've been there for a while, and we haven't really done any planting since then. So that was part of the FDOT project when they, you know, redesigned US 1 corridor. So they're going to last a while, and we decide what we do, unless we, you know, do biannuals and all that. But most of the plants we're going to do are going to be, you know, Florida friendly. You know, we're not going to need to change them out. Probably going to be looking at, you know, some hedges, and, you know, I'm not a landscape architect, but I'm sure that we will do something that we're not going to have to do a lot of maintenance to.
Use some of those native grasses and stuff. They don't require so much water. Okay, thank you.
Was it just the medians or the right-of-ways as well?
So up near like the Jaloma part, there was, we were talking about doing some beautification along there with some irrigation also in the right-of-way, you know, like up near our signs, you know, trying to improve those areas too. So there was not just the medians toward the gateways, there were some improvements there too.
And just to clarify, you told me last time that this grant specifically goes for an FDOT road.
This grant, as I understand it, we're applying for it to utilize for an FDOT controlled space, which we are legally required to maintain. We have an agreement to maintain that space.
Who controls Old Dixie Highway?
The county does.
Okay.
So that's a separate issue.
Okay.
If we are lucky enough to win this, where are we going to pull the matching funds from? What account?
And that was my next
Well,
question.
we'd budget for it, so I think the grant closes, and Doug's back in the back, I think it closes September. I don't think the matching part would have to come out until, you know, past that, so we would budget for the $40,000, which is why this is kind of in front of you. So if you're telling me we're gonna move forward this and we end up getting it, I need to make sure that we're budgeting for it appropriately. Does that sound right?
We have to file for notice of intent by August 1st, and then our application deadline would be October 1st. We wouldn't find out if we actually received the award until late fiscal year 2021.
So would we be putting money into like a grant fund? Okay.
So Doug, stay there. What would the actual cost be if we were to get the grant? What would the village be paying for that project? The 40?
In the neighborhood of $30,000 to $40,000. Like I mentioned in the workshop, we budgeted on the high side for irrigation, removal, and plantings. And maybe I forgot to, I didn't mention that the plantings on the high side, $25, includes all the labor as well for the installation. So it's not just the plants that you're paying for at $25 a piece. It includes all the labor for removal.
Does it include the irrigation that needs to go in?
It includes irrigation as well.
I would just say, while it would be lovely to update US 1, I just don't see it as a priority right now. I don't think it looks awful the way it is now. And I think we have some other things on our plate and we need to prioritize a little better. And we're not guaranteed the grant money either, so I'm not in favor of it.
And so I agree with that position.
I'm hesitant on the if we got the grant. That's really what's stopping me, and the scope of the project. If we were working on a bigger beautification project somewhere else, I'd be more open to spending the money on it.
And maybe to put it in perspective, when we did the US 1 project, the lane reduction project, part of the agreement was that we would replace the landscaping in front of St. Jude Church. They gave us that turn lane, they gave us a right-of-way. And that project there was $20,000 worth of landscaping. So that puts it in perspective compared to the entire corridor. You have about 1.3 miles of roadway, about 7 or 8 medians. You have the right-of-way at Tequesta Drive, Beach Road. So it's pretty extensive project compared to the St. Jude project that was $20,000 just for that project. And that was the same type of project, removal, installation, irrigation.
Yeah, I appreciate the comments. I guess I feel like the US 1 stretch, particularly coming in on the south side, as I said before, I think it looks pretty poor, and I think that's one of the main gateways into the village, and I think it creates an impression when you come in, and I think it would be important to improve it, and we've got an opportunity through the grant to obviously decrease our direct cost for that by $50,000. We also have the situation where we chose not to improve the driveways of the non-residents along Tequesta Drive as we do the sidewalk project that saved us $37,000. So you're right, Molly. It's always a matter of priorities, but I think US 1 being kind of like the main boulevard through the middle of our town as people come and go, residents as well as others, I think actually, in my mind, is a fairly important initiative. And as the manager said, later on as we go forward, there may be further enhancements, there may be further things that occur, but that could be a year off, a year and a half off, 2 years. I think there's an opportunity for us to do something good along that stretch now that'll improve the overall look and ambiance of the village. So, I'm in favor of us moving forward, and I think we can definitely find the money that we need to make this work. So,
Can I ask Doug one more question, please?
Sure.
So the sign that he keeps referencing on the south side of the south entrance to Tequesta on US 1, I'm assuming you're talking about the lighthouse area, I guess?
Yeah, I'm talking about the whole stretch from the sign all the way up to the TD Bank.
Okay, but even let's just talk about the sign area, because it says, welcome to Tequesta, Village of Tequesta. Is it not possible for you and your team to work on that area specifically, not the whole stretch of US 1?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
How often do y'all have it on your maintenance schedule to do the maintenance on the signs that we have throughout
Maintenance is on a weekly basis, especially now in the growth season. But that corridor that you're referencing, that's part of Beach Road maintenance. And just so you know, yeah. So we're out there on a weekly basis. We also have Terracon, one of our contractors, is out there on a weekly basis as well, maintaining the medians on US 1.
Mr. Bradford.
This opportunity may come around again next year. I mean, it changes from year to year. Sometimes the requirements change, sometimes the match changes. I think the last time they had it was a 50% match, not a 100% match, but they included the engineering and the grant writing. So
The federal government's sure giving away a lot of money right now, so maybe they'll beef it up a little bit. We won't have to match so much of it next time.
Well, we're going to be looking for money for a lot of other things too, as you all know. So
Hold your reins back. Biden, he's going to cut some more loose for us probably.
At the end of the day, no matter what we decide out there, it has to go back to the DOT for approval.
Yeah. Mr. Bradford, do you want to make a comment?
I was wondering if you could clarify something. So, in your last item on the agenda, I think it was, that you've approved you want to go forward with a US 1 corridor study. And based upon what you all know, and some of the public knows, based upon the one presentation that you've received, landscaping is a major aspect of all of that. And I'm wondering, and I do agree with Frank that the US 1 needs to be fixed. I drove it today specifically to look to see, and it's, kind of ratty. But why would you make all this investment and then in theory turn around and have this whole thing that comes down for how it should be, and it may be in conflict? And that's like a potential for a lot of wasted money.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of where I was going earlier, Thomas, when I was asking about what's going to be happening, to the areas that we're talking about improving with this money through this program. You go in there and spend our $40,000 and what little bit of money it's going to cost us from the grant side that's already in the budget, still money that we have. And then it's how long is it going to be in there before we're potentially going to go in there and tear some of that out.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we could probably just go in there, for probably, less than $10,000 and go in and do some significant improvement in-house, and just do a really good maybe cleanup or something and put some nice accent plants or so forth like that in. I mean, better than anybody, what you could go in there and do with, in-house like you did here in the front of the facility, with those bromeliads and stuff. I mean, what a difference all that makes up front there. And it's something that you could probably actually do without going out and hiring a landscape architect to do it, in some of the areas it would just take a little bit to make it a lot more, attractive.
Yeah, the only areas we can do that is where the welcome walls are. So you have one at County Line,
You got
West
it.
Drive, and Beach Road.
Yeah.
Those 3 areas.
And Mr. Bradford, I asked myself that same question. I mentioned that at the last workshop, whether we should defer this in lieu of the work as you mentioned. But again, I guess a couple of things. One is, as we're going through this process, for example, the Mastriani project, that they may come forward with that. We're going to be asking them to make a big investment in landscaping, as we did with Austrade. So part of me says, well, if we're asking the private entities to do that, should not the village also be making some efforts in that regard? The second thing is, again, we don't know what the time frame might be for some of these other improvements to take place. So is it worth making an investment, even if we have to change a few things down the road? Is it worth making an investment now, particularly where we're getting a grant to pay for 50% of it, to do those enhancements, make the corridor look a lot better, and then whatever happens in the future happens. Again, my personal preference is that we make the investment, but again, this is a council decision, so we're all going to vote on this.
So let me ask one quick question. If we do have a developer come in and build on US 1 and they do have to put money aside for schools, landscaping, and whatever, that goes into a trust fund, correct?
Where's he?
Mr. Davis, do you know?
I'm not sure what you're referring to. Could you ask the question again?
No, I said we're going to be asking them when they, just like with Austrade, we went back and said we really wanted them to beef up the landscaping. So they spent the money to do that.
Okay.
That came out of their pocket.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not talking about setting up a separate fund. Really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
I was
Okay.
confused, so thank you.
Yeah, I was trying to understand where that money is coming from. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? All right, so the question is, it's to authorize the village manager to move forward with this. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion that we don't move forward.
Second.
Yeah, well, if we don't have a motion to move it forward, then I think
We
it
had- we
dies,
changed it
correct?
last time.
No, the
back
motion
yet,
is
anyway.
to
Just
not do this.
Okay,
You have a
all right.
motion and a second, so that would be what you.
So we're voting not
You're
to
voting
not to do it. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Aye. 4-1. Okay, moving on to number 13, Mr. Allen.
So at the December 10th council meeting, as of January 1, the expanded Family Medical Leave Act expired in most municipalities. The council chose at that time to extend the emergency paid sick leave portion of that as an optional, benefit. At that time, staff was directed to keep an eye on it, and when the vaccine was readily available, and we were able to bring this back to council, that we would. So staff is recommending as of July 3rd that benefit will expire. And so that's what you have in front of you as an action for that policy to expire as of July 3rd.
So we're ending the program.
Right.
Okay. It's open for council discussion. Okay, do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, moving on to new business, we have advanced the Hedrick item. And Mr. Allen, that is you as well.
Were you moving 22 up to?
Yeah, we moved up 22 to 14.
So
and-
that's your next item.
And everything else is going to drop to back one.
So this item is a change order. As you know, we approved the GMP back in February. And so we entered a contract with Hedrick Brothers for that cost. This you have in front of you is a change order. Multiple reasons. There's increase in cost, also due to the change in scope, some on-site adjustments that were made, and of course the rising costs. So this amount is captured by what we owner contingency. We had some money from the loan proceeds that we're able to use to cover these costs. It does pretty much deplete that. However, we're still within those loan proceeds, so we're not, taken out of the reserves or anything for those funds. So with your approval, we'll use those loan proceeds to cover the change order for these costs. I mean, and the only other comment I would say is, costs are continuing to go up, and, I have been cautioned by Hedrick that, we continue to see those, and so while we hope not to bring more to you, it's possible that there will be some change orders. So I'm open to any questions that you may have regarding these. I know you guys have the full list of those orders. We've vetted this process through legal as well on a couple different fronts. So any questions or comments you have, I can answer those questions.
Well, I certainly, I'm in the construction side of in business, and the prices are astronomical of what they're going to. I mean, it's a lot of people. I mean, I had one guy, I think he's going to pull the plug on the project simply because of the increase in cost of materials, and it's across the board. I mean, it's a really unusual time. I have never seen it in all the years I've been doing this. The prices that have escalated like they have in the past, year, honestly, and stuff. I mean, some people are just losing millions of dollars on single projects simply because of the price increases. I mean, I'm concerned about more coming, up as we progress through this. I hope that things will level off. If we can quit bailing everybody out, we can get everybody back to work, and we can beef up production in some of these places. And that's really anyway. But I'm getting off the subject. So yeah, I understand all this.
I just had a couple questions. Was there any language in the contract about what's required to claim delay and costs associated with that?
Yes. So section 14.5.9 specifically addresses the issue. And it says, "The construction industry is currently experiencing extreme price and supply volatility with material and labor. To every extent possible, the construction manager will lock in prices from subcontractors and suppliers for materials. However, due to current market fluctuations, the price of these materials are subject to sudden, significant changes, and firm price cannot always be obtained from subcontractors and suppliers. If the cost of materials used or to be used to perform the work increases or decreases from the cost of the same materials included in the original proposals used to establish the cost of work, then the contract sum will be increased or decreased by the actual amount of the cost increase or decrease, with no additional profit or overhead to the construction manager. If shortages of materials cause delay in schedule, then the schedule shall be modified accordingly, and the construction manager shall have the right to request additional general conditions for the period of the time the contract is extended."
So is all of the delay just from the pandemic impact, or was there any design changes that caused delay? Because everything you said sounds more like if it's associated with like material increases and outside control. I don't know if all the delay is for outside
No, there was
control,
some.
if there was some design that delayed the project too.
There was some design that delayed the project. There was a change order for AV equipment, so it's not all based on the materials. There was a change for the generator, after we, the building was designed, what we were gonna power, so it changed basically the size of the generator changed, which changed, a lot of the electrical. There was also an on-site adjustment that was made by Hedrick Brothers and confirmed by the engineers that need to be made that change, because there was some additional rebar and concrete that was needed. So there was some changes that also affected this change order.
Is there contract language for that kind of delay?
I'm sorry.
Is there any contract language that addresses how to handle that kind of delay? Not the
Design delay.
Yeah, design delay, or pretty much.
So, we have a liquidated damages provision in the contract that deals with delay, but there are a number of exceptions in terms of things that are not counted against the contract manager, such as force majeure, things beyond anyone's control.
But wouldn't that be in our contract with our designer, not our construction manager?
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble.
Wouldn't that be the contract with our designer and not the construction manager?
Possibly. I reviewed the contract between the village and the construction manager. And I got this like 6 o'clock last night, and so I had a very limited amount of time to try and get as much information to you as possible. The only other thing I could offer, REG is our administrator for this contract, and they did approve the change order pursuant to the contract terms. They may be able to answer questions like that better than me, but as I said, between last night and this morning, I got as much together as I could for you.
We will take a look at that, though. We'll take a look at the other side of that.
Okay, and then you read that there's no markup on any of the material increases, but it looks like bottom line there's overall markup on everything. So I don't know if that should be adjusted. And then what's the subcontractor default insurance? Is that confirmed?
I couldn't find that in the documents that I looked at. I could not find subcontractor default insurance. I didn't see it listed as a required insurance provision. I don't know if that's something that's part of commercial liability or not. Again, that may be an REG question, but I did not see that called out as a required type of insurance in the documents I reviewed. So I don't know what that is.
I guess I would want to understand what that is, and if that markup's allowed, and then possibly the contractor fee might need to be adjusted so the price escalation items aren't getting marked up.
So Molly, are you suggesting that, I'm going to put words in your mouth, that rather than approve this evening, we go back and take a look at some of these elements that you've brought up and make sure that the number that we're looking at is the appropriate number before we approve this?
I think so. Yeah, yes, that is what I'm suggesting.
Okay.
Would not approving this cause any more delays?
Doug from Hedrick Brothers here, maybe he can answer what the consequences of that, and maybe we can approve it and then look for the adjustments, at a later date. But Doug from Hedrick Brothers.
Thank you. As Councilwoman Young pointed out, you are 100% right. The material escalation, that clause is applicable. Within this, there's approximately, I believe, $21,000 in material escalation. So of that, we will have to adjust the applicable fee on top of that. I would ask that if we can make some kind of proviso, because this is time of the essence, if I can say that we can have that turned around by a day or two. Is there any kind of way to do that?
Are we allowed to approve it, noting that the adjustments need to be put forth on another change order next time?
Is there a number we can approve tonight that eliminates any delay but allows us to address the issues that Ms. Young brought up? I mean, I know we can always talk about a clawback, but
No. I wouldn't know how to break that out. I have to get back to you tomorrow.
And then do you know what the subcontractor default insurance is?
Yeah, so that's in lieu of payment performed bond, so it's a subcontractor, basically instead of all the subs having to get their own P&P bond, we cover them all from $100,000 to $1 million.
Okay, and then is that in the contract?
Yeah.
Okay. So it sounds like just the fee.
Can you repeat exactly what you're looking for, as far as an answer for?
I don't know if we can make a motion to approve this, because we surely don't want to hold up or delay anything, and then, but with this provision that they have to, next council meeting, we have to see the change order with the adjustment and the credit. I don't know if we're allowed to do that.
Right.
No,
It's Hedrick giving us the credit, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we would just have a change order in the next
Correct.
council meeting with
We-
the adjustment.
we could
That would
approve
be
it.
the alternative, yeah.
I think we could make a motion to approve this with the understanding that the issues that Molly's raised would be addressed, and that would be a credit back that we would receive at the.
Well, if I understand, we can always do a deductive change order should we find something that we're paying for through this change order that maybe we really should be getting a credit back for, and just to do a deductive change order at a later date, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's a real simple process. It's just as simple as this one. It is to get a deductive change order.
Right, yeah.
And you guys are, Hedrick, you're good with what Councilmember Young is suggesting in terms
Yeah,
of?
absolutely.
Okay.
So.
I make a motion to approve
I'll
with
second that.
Well,
the idea of doing the deduction change order as
Okay.
necessary.
By the next meeting,
Okay, all right.
for the next.
That's the motion. Do I have a second? You seconded it? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you, Doug. Okay, moving on to
14.
variance
The old
221, the old 14, now 15. This is an application of My Three Chicks Corporation for a variance in order to sell intoxicating beverages. Nelson?
And Mayor, before we begin, your next two agenda items are quasi-judicial proceedings. With your permission, I can take care of the preliminary matters for both of those at this time. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, our next two agenda items, the variance 02-21 regarding the property at 235 South US 1 and the variance request regarding the property at 377 Tequesta Drive. These are both quasi-judicial proceedings. If you're going to be speaking to the Village Council about either of these items, your testimony needs to be sworn. Let me place everyone under oath at this time. If you'll all please, you're already standing and raising your right hand. So do each of you swear or affirm under penalties of perjury that your testimony to the Village Council will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you very much. And then I need to come back to council. If any of you have had any ex parte discussions with anybody regarding either of these items, done any site visits or any investigations of your own, those types of things would need to be disclosed for the record at this time for both agenda items.
Just that the owner of Bagel Boys called me a couple weeks ago to confirm the meeting date and time.
Thank you.
And I'm a frequent customer of PERC, and I know both Megan and Tom, and so, yes, they brought this item to my attention as well.
Thank you.
I drove by and got some ice cream and looked in the window and drove by and big old.
What flavor?
I get a chocolate shake.
That's a question for the press.
Yeah.
Any others? All right, then, thank you, Mayor. We can proceed with the next agenda, with the first agenda item.
Okay. Nelson?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Variance 02-21 is from My Three Chicks Corporation to open a restaurant at Village Square. It will be a plant-based restaurant with a full bar. Since we have a zoning code that requires to come for a variance if the establishment will sell alcohol within 1,000 feet, and in this case, there is 160 feet to the Rock the Spectrum Kids Gym. That's the reason we have an applicant for a variance. And we also, in your package, will find a letter from the Rock the Spectrum Kids Gym. They don't have a problem with this establishment selling alcohol. And the applicant is here. If you please would like to explain more about the restaurant.
Hi, I'm Megan Woodard. I have Perk Coffee House here in Tequesta, and I'm opening the longest restaurant opening ever. Trying to get this restaurant open.
I have been following that.
It's going to be all plant-based, and this is kind of my last step, and hoping to open the first week or two of July.
Okay. Thank you, Megan. Council, any questions, discussion? Okay, do I have a motion to approve?
I'll motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Megan, good luck. Hopefully get this open soon.
Thank you.
All right, Nelsa, variance 321 for Bagel Boys Tequesta.
Yes, variance 3-21 is Mr. O'Brien is the applicant. He's here. He has the presentation for the council, and he will be at Gallery Square North. And he's looking forward to have a presentation because my first question was a bagel place selling alcohol. That caught my attention. So he said, well, let me put together a presentation to further explain. So, sir?
Thank you. First of all, thank you for taking the time to review our request for variance, council. And secondly, I may have come slightly over-prepared, but I did put together a PowerPoint, and I haven't done one since college, and I was not a very good student, so I am following through with it. So my name's Seamus O'Brien. This is my brother, Dennis O'Brien, right behind me. We are the owners of Bagel Boys restaurant located in Jupiter. We also have and soon to be Bagel Boys Tequesta shortly here. Hopefully sooner rather than later. We'll see how that goes. So without further ado, this is what we got. So I'm sure you got a lot of questions kind of how it would work regarding why does a bagel shop need a variance for the liquor license. So Bagel Boys and Casa Caña meets Tequesta. One restaurant, two concepts, made for locals by locals. Who is Bagel Boys? We are a locally owned and operated small business located in Jupiter, Florida for the past 16 years. We pride ourselves in being completely immersed and involved in the local community. We've committed ourselves in Jupiter to donating and participating in as many local events and charities as possible, and we plan to continue that as soon as we move into Tequesta here shortly. And Casa Caña. So as you can tell, the pictures kind of lead to what the vibe will be like. Basically think 1950s, 60s Miami and Cuban-inspired dishes. We're going to be featuring fresh crusted fish from local fishermen combined with Cuban-inspired dishes such as roast pork belly, Cuban sandwiches. Clean, bright colors, relaxed atmosphere, chill vibes will invoke nostalgia and make you feel like you've traveled in time to Miami in the 60s, otherwise known as Paradise on Earth. Flip-flops, board shorts, and aviators will be encouraged in our restaurant. How the business works. So this is kind of where I get to it. So Bagel Boys will operate for breakfast and lunch, offering New York-style bagels baked in our custom brick oven. So we do wood-fired bagels, essentially. Egg sandwiches, omelets, etc. Casa Caña will open for lunch and dinner, offering fresh fish, as I mentioned, flatbreads out of our brick oven, oysters, cocktails, and menu rotation based on the seasoned fresh catches of our local fishermen have to offer. Bagel Boys will be closing at 3 p.m., so there will be an overlap of 11 to 3 o'clock where both sides of the restaurant are open. However, Casa Caña will then stay open until around 9 p.m., serving our dinner menu and Miami-inspired cocktails. And our last little shout out of why we chose Tequesta and what the city does mean to us. So since I took over the business around 5 years ago, we started as a small business. Our mother was the original one who had it, along with my brother. And DeQuesta's kind of been the primary spot we've been eyeing up and we've wanted to expand into. We love the focus on local businesses and community that DeQuesta has. As brothers with families of our own, we also feel DeQuesta kind of epitomizes what we're all about ourselves. As a Jupiter kid, I consider DeQuesta to be the last frontier, so to speak, and one of the few South Florida cities who stay true to their locals and local businesses, giving it that perfect charm for a restaurant resembling old school Miami. We love everything about the city of DeQuesta, and couldn't choose a better place for the opening of Bagel Boys, so thanks for having us.
Thanks for being here. Council comments?
I just can't wait till it gets going.
Indeed. I can walk there, so.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a University of Miami grad, not in the 60s, in the 70s.
Okay.
But I used to frequent Little Havana often. So I'll be very interested in seeing this opened
Can't wait.
and sampling the fare.
We are getting questions on timeline too, so I'm just curious on your anticipated timeline.
Yeah, so hopefully September, most likely beginning of October, it's looking like, according to our contractor at least.
Okay.
As part of your package, you will see the letter from First Baptist Church and also the letter from Good Shepherd Church.
All right. Any other discussion?
Just
Do I
a
have-
welcome.
Yep,
We're very excited.
absolutely. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
5-0.
Thanks.
It's unanimous. All
Best
right.
of luck.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Welcome. Okay, moving on, we have ordinance number 9-21. Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 9-21, an ordinance of the Village Council of the Village of DeQuesta, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances at Chapter 78, Zoning, Article 9, Supplemental Regulations, Division 1 generally, creating a new Section 78-308 entitled Dog-Friendly Dining in order to allow and regulate dogs within certain outdoor portions of public food service establishments, providing that each and every other section and subsection of Chapter 78 shall remain in full force and effect as previously adopted, providing conflicts clause, severability clause, authority to codify, effective date, and further purposes. This is first reading.
Okay. And this is a public hearing. Do I have any comments from the public? Okay, close to the public. Now open to the council.
Because I was trying to understand, are we requiring them to block off a whole separate area for dogs?
No, the state basically prohibits dogs in the outdoor dining areas unless the municipality has an ordinance that overrides that limitation. And since we have multiple restaurants who already have patrons who bring their dogs, one of the restaurant owners in town told me that when they had the inspector come in, they pointed out the fact that they knew we didn't have a local ordinance at this time, and were questioning why they were allowing patrons to have dogs. So this was a response to
It just makes it legal to have a dog there.
It makes it legal,
That's
yes.
basically what it's doing.
This will not mandate that anybody do anything, but if you want to allow outdoor dog dining, then you would have to apply for the permit and register with the village and go through the process. But you know, if you're a restaurateur, you don't have to do anything if you don't want to. And you don't have to allow the dogs to be allowed at your outdoor seating.
So they would have to actually apply for an additional permit to allow people to bring dogs into their outdoor dining
Yes.
area? So, okay.
That was actually part of my hesitancy was if there is an establishment that doesn't want consumers to assume they can bring their dog, they can make it to where they can require their consumers not to have their dog.
Correct.
Okay.
I believe, I think that's very
Yeah,
clear.
the state law says you're not permitted to have a dog.
I know, I'm very
If-
hesitant for many reasons. And I am a dog owner, and just,
Well, they do. I mean, I take my dog up to Josco's, and I mean, we take him out there sometimes.
Well, if you go by Perk, you go by any number of restaurants,
Yeah.
it's already happening. So
Yeah.
this just means that they're now legal.
I just think it gives the restaurant the opportunity to decide if they want to do it or not.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Legally.
Legally.
Yeah.
All right, close for council discussion. Do I have a motion?
I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, okay, it's unanimous. Okay, moving on. What is now number 18, approve award of request for proposal for independent auditing services to Maudlin and Jenkins. You? Welcome to the
Yes,
podium.
good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council.
Basically, the item before you is a collective effort of the Auditor Selection Committee, which, before I move on, I just would like to extend my gratitude to the Vice Mayor, who served as the chair of the committee, as well as all of the other members that they contributed their time and effort to this endeavor. Basically, what the item is essentially asking is for your approval of the recommendation of the Auditor Selection Committee, which they received 6 total proposals from various CPA firms in the region, and they recommended the firm of Malden and Jenkins, which was the top-ranked firm to provide the independent auditing services to the village over the 5-year period beginning with fiscal year 2021 at a cost of $261,000 with a potential 1-year renewal option. This firm has a national presence and it has a strong Southeast presence, a total firm-wide staff of 320 individuals. The office that will be serving the village is in Bradenton, and overall the process was exceedingly fruitful for the village. We had a very strong response from quite a few firms, and with that said, I'm pretty much open for any questions that you might have regarding the process.
I just want to say it was extremely thorough. I think you guys did a great job, and especially I looked at your tentative schedule, and I'm a schedule junkie, and right here, Village Council meeting, June 10th, so great job, guys.
Thanks.
Other comments?
No, I'll just say Mr. Dunkley and his team did an incredible job of having all of us on schedule, and Laurie making sure all of the committee members had the information that they needed. So it went very smoothly, I think, all things considered.
Thanks, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I know Daniel that from my office worked in it. He really enjoyed it. Spoke very highly of you too as well.
We enjoyed him as well, the entire committee,
Yeah.
with Dr.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Laurie?
A group full of numbers people. Who doesn't love that?
And engineer.
And
He did a great job.
I did have a couple of questions for you, just real quick. With the community center, we're very likely to see an audit from the IG. If there's any need for those two groups to interface, is that going to affect costs? I didn't see where that was necessarily an element that was contemplated.
The predecessor auditor, you mean?
No, I said the Inspector General may very well do an audit.
Oh, no, that will be, the Inspector General, they conduct their audit separately.
Okay.
They will meet with us and give us a scope of the audit, but this in no way, part of the engagement letter, the auditor work papers, the independent auditor work papers, they're subject to review by outside agencies, including the Inspector General and any grant or oversight agencies.
So my question is if Inspector General comes back and engages with our auditor, are the costs of any time spent during that process going to be covered in the costs that they've given us at this point in time?
Within reason, but they typically, from my experience, they're always open to provide whatever information that's required.
Okay. And then the other question, because I noticed that they had a very impressive background in terms of addressing audits of the federal monies, but obviously we're going to move much more aggressively on the grant front than we have. Well, we're already doing so now, but I anticipate that will actually pick up. So again, it appears that if we are successful, if we do significantly more in that area, it seems as though that's encompassed within the scope of what they've already put forth. Is that a true statement?
Correct.
Okay, all right. And the pension plans are included?
Correct.
Okay. And the only other question I had was, I noticed you had the ratings of each individual, how they rated the top 3 firms, but the criteria component where, and I think it was on, it was page 27 of the memo where we had the technical criteria, where we had the different weightings. I didn't see the results of that for each of those final 3 firms. I'm not saying it changes anything, but.
Yeah, the result is available with the village clerk as well as with the department. In terms of the final ranking, that was included as part of the agenda.
Yeah, I did see the final rankings.
Yeah,
Okay.
but the results are available for public inspection. We have that fully documented within the file.
Okay.
And just percentage-wise, the scoring of that Multing Jenkins was like almost 30 points higher than everybody else.
It was, okay. All right. Very good. Well, those are all the questions I had. Thank you very much. And again, I want to commend you, as others have, and Kyle, again, thank you for the work that you guys have all done in putting this together. Having served on the last audit committee, I know how much time and effort and energy goes into this process. And obviously, everybody was volunteering for this role. So again, appreciation all the way around. Okay, so do we have a motion to move to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving on now, Mr. Hammond, we have the piggyback contract and purchase order for piping services.
Hello again. The village utilities has a need to clean the raw water piping for the superficial wells. This will remove years of iron deposits that collect and accumulate. I think there's a few photos in there that kind of give you an idea of what that looked like. This agenda item might look a little familiar because last month, under the manager's approvals on consent, there was an approval for the installing the valves that were necessary to complete this project. And so this is the second step of that. These pipes are cleaned using what's called a pigging process, where a vendor or contractor will push through different sized foam or polyurethane plugs or pigs. That is just what it collects, it pushes out, is disposed of. To ensure the lowest price, we reviewed different options, and what's before you now is a piggyback of a competitively solicited Pinellas County contract that was awarded to Professional Piping Services. Within the approved FY21 budget that we're in, there was $50,000 that was budgeted for this effort. The request before you now is for $39,273.42, which includes a $5,000 contingency for unforeseen circumstances.
Well, I know everybody's always happy when you guys come in below what you budgeted for, so that's a great thing. Council comments, thoughts?
I got a question. What pipe are they actually going to pig?
This is the piping between the superficial or shallow wells and the water plant.
And how many linear feet is that?
Oh, a couple thousand. Somewhere between 1,500 and 1,000 if I remember.
I've pigged lines before to take very superficial materials and stuff out of pipes, but I've never taken and pigged any old lines like this and tried to get iron deposits out of them. So that's a fairly effective technique in order to get those iron deposits, because they're relatively hard.
No, actually, these are a clay slime field. It's very soft. One of the photos you'll see in the top right quadrant
photo up?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Of the pipe, there's actually a little indentation there. That's my fingerprint.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of gives you an idea. It's pretty soft.
Oh, okay. So it's pretty effective then, huh?
It is. And like I said, they're not going to go through with a full-sized foam pig the first run through. They'll start with a small one.
Pull it up, get bigger and bigger and bigger.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you know I love visuals. And these pictures are fabulous. I don't think anyone in a normal public aspect would ever know what it looks like. I think that's awesome. Just curious though, when they push out the sediments, where do they put it afterwards?
There's a an old pond that was used as part of the well development behind the plant when the well was, when the RO portion of the plant, the reverse osmosis portion of the plant was constructed. And so there's temporary piping that we're going to be running back there, capturing it in that pond for disposal.
Interesting. And then
It's
what?
just a dry, I say pond, but it's a dry depression.
And then it's just gonna sit there?
What's that?
It's just gonna sit there afterwards? I'm just curious how that works.
Oh, well, it's wet, so it's wet and slimy. It'll dry and dewater to be something that's easily removed.
Okay.
And Bruce, in case you really want to know, it appears to be anywhere from 1,300 to 3,400 linear feet. Because I highlighted it on the proposal, because I'm a nerd like that.
Okay, any other comments?
I just love to see that we're actually doing things to maintain our utility lines, so kudos to everybody involved.
Our operators are professionals that are good at what they do. There's indicators that say that there's this type of maintenance that needs to be done, and they bring it up and say, hey, this is what we need to do, and you can see from the photos that they were spot on. We need to make this happen.
Actually, based on what you're saying, is that the efficiency of the pumps and the movement of the water, the cost of that should actually go down because there's less friction, on the pipes and stuff, so that's going to allow it to be more economically operated because of the less friction and stuff in there.
Yeah, you're right. It's like the difference between drinking from a straw versus drinking from a coffee stir. There's a lot more friction and minor losses through a pipe opening this big versus this big. You're right.
Good analogy.
What's the time frame on how this buildup got here? I mean,
it's a couple decades.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you share after pictures, please?
Yes, I can.
Awesome.
Who does your TVing for you?
This pipeline was not TV'd, but we have two vendors that have done
Shenandoah
and Hinterland, the two that have done pipeline TV services for us.
Yeah.
But what we saw on this one was when those valves were installed that I mentioned earlier, they had to cut out a section of pipe, and
So you saw what it was like?
I was there so I could get photos of it to provide a visual.
Okay.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Item 20, Resolution 2021, a resolution of the Village Council adopting a capital asset policy, providing an effective date and for other purposes. You?
Yes, Mayor. This item, essentially what it seeks to do is to do two things: to document our policies and procedures relative to our capital assets, and secondly, is to increase our capitalization threshold from $1,000 to $5,000. The reason for, and I'll kind of take this in reverse, the reason for the increase of the capitalization threshold to $5,000 is that that's an actual recommendation, that's a best practice from the Government Finance Officers Association. Their recommended practice is to use a threshold not less than $5,000, and which will be an item later. The state constantly refers to the $5,000 threshold as a threshold which they feel is the most efficient in terms of materiality for identifying, valuing, and reporting on their capital assets. So the reason for the documentation of the policies is that the capital assets make up approximately 66% of our total assets of around $43.7 million. So the relative importance of our capital assets drives the fact that we need to have in writing all of those procedures pertaining to these assets. And so I'm pretty much available for any questions that you might have pertaining to the policy itself.
Any questions? Go ahead, Molly.
I would just like to suggest, I think it's a really good thing this was put together, and was there any kind of peer review on it? I guess I would like to suggest maybe having some kind of peer review.
Peer review, good question. What I did in terms of developing the policy, I borrowed from a lot of we have a discussion board, the FGFOA as well as the GFOA, and we share a lot of materials, and internally I have a lot of vetting from the assistant finance director, run it through there. She has a lot of institutional knowledge, and but collectively we reach out and we serve on discussion boards that we get a lot of feedback, either through our listserv on the FGFOA as well as through government forums from the GFOA that we use to put it together. Yeah.
Is this a new policy, or is this a
Yes.
replacement or update to something that pre-existed?
It's the $1,000 was kind of an informal policy. The 1,000, it was a written policy as it pertains to the surplus, disposition of surplus asset, which is another
Which is a
agenda item this evening.
Right, it's a follow-on, yes.
Yes, but the overall capital assets policy is a new.
Okay.
We're just memorializing
Okay.
that.
All right. Any further discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Okay, and then the second item, which, as we said, is a kind of a corresponding or component, secondary component of this.
Yes, precisely. So this second item is just to be in concert with the capital assets policy, and it's referenced also in the state statute that they're using a threshold of $5,000. So essentially what you're doing is delegating to the village manager the authority to dispose of through the most appropriate means to dispose of our surplus property as defined by our surplus property policy.
And this one is an update, because I think we did have a written policy on that
Exactly.
previously.
This one is in
Yeah.
fact an update.
Okay. Any questions, comments from the council?
There's two resolutions, so I guess I understand the 5,000 threshold. What's the difference between the two resolutions that are attached?
The difference between the two is the first pertains to our overall capital assets policy. It goes over how we're gonna value the assets, what's the various types and the classes of assets. We go over what their service lives, what time frame do we depreciate infrastructure, property, plant, and equipment. That's what the first policy addresses. The second
Resolution
policy-
2921?
Exactly, the 2921, now this specifically speaks to surplus property. How do we surplus the property? What means can the village manager undertake to dispose of those assets? And it pretty much is in line with the state statute.
Are you looking at 3315?
Yeah, and then 3315.
It's just a historical perspective. That was passed in 2015.
So is that getting voided or what?
That's just
Overridden?
It's getting updated.
Overridden.
To take into
Okay,
account.
Sorry, that's where I was just.
It's getting updated to
With
take
the
into
two,
account the
like they're the
first.
same, but they're different, because you're updating that one too. Okay.
Yeah, we're just striking the threshold amount, 3350.
But that one, we're having both.
Correct me if I'm wrong. The
Sorry.
first
Thank you.
one I would say is like the overall management of capital. The second one is when we have surplus that we want to get rid of, what's the?
Yeah, no, I
appropriate-
understand the
yeah.
capital asset plan.
Yeah.
I was
Okay.
strictly just the two resolutions are very similar, were throwing me off.
That's true.
That's pretty much all that I have regarding the item.
So we have a motion to approve. Did I already do that? Oh, I didn't think so. Okay, motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. The last item, Chief Medina, thank you for hanging in there with us. This is Resolution 2721, increasing the fiscal year general budget by increasing revenues and expenditures in the amount of $50,000 to fund the police department's coronavirus emergency supplemental funding grant.
Mr. Mayor, Council, you have before you the resolution to accept the $50,000 additional COVID grant that we were able to obtain from FDLE. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Assistant Chief McGrew, who honestly worked on this tirelessly. And it'll be a total of $100,000 of grant money that we did not have to match and the village has received, so.
So we just have to accept it. Any discussion?
I'm just
You
curious.
sure we want to do this?
Where do you plan on using this?
So one of the things we want to get is a portable message board, which, as we all know in the village, it's, you know, it's, Doug can attest to this, it works sometimes, sometimes it doesn't. And then the other thing is we're upgrading the technology within the briefing room and the conference room. Obviously now with COVID and we've adjusted on how we go to court. A lot of it is now via Zoom, and we still want to keep COVID restrictions. So one of the other things we were able to do is get a subscription to Police One Academy, which allows us to train the officers via computer, via TV, what have you, and this will help the officers so we can do a roll call training. While they're in roll call, put a 15-20-minute video, and they'll be able to pick from hundreds of topics that they have from Police One Academy, so we'll be continually training.
Chief, let me ask you a question. I mean, obviously, one of the issues going forward here, a lot of companies are going to have to deal with is do you go back into the office, do you work remote, do you do a hybrid? You mentioned that we've been able to have our officers address the court through Zoom rather than going in person, which obviously saves time and expense, keeps them here. Do you anticipate that policy will continue as we go forward, or what do you see happening there?
I think there will be an adjustment. I think, you know, as far as first appearances, I think that we'll see a change in that. They won't have to go as much. I honestly do think, and to be quite honest, I think it benefits the police departments just more so. They're not driving down to West Palm Beach and, you know, if they're in service, being out of service, they could do it from the station house and then just go right back on patrol if they're working that day. So I think it's beneficial from a law enforcement perspective, just keeping more officers on the road.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of efficiency, that,
absolutely.
I guess, like you could say, that's one of the good things that came out of COVID, so. Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
I got another question. Your vehicles, how are they holding up?
The older fleet, they're breaking down. They're breaking down. We just got off the phone, in fact, today, as you all know, you approved 3 vehicles for this fiscal year, which, you know, because of COVID, it was delayed from Dodge, what have you. They're actually at the dealership, at the installer down in Hialeah, and we were told today that possibly by next Wednesday we'll have 2 vehicles, and then a third to follow the following week. So that would be the 3 that you all approved. That's going to come in handy because 504 is down. Another one needs major damage that we're holding off because we want to be able to surplus it. So you know, we're not going to do unnecessary repairs if we could put that money obviously towards other things. So yeah, they're definitely meeting their end line.
So that would be the 6th leased vehicle?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Okay.
It'll be, what do we have?
6,
1,
7?
2. It'll be 5, and then 6 in the admin car. Yep, 6.
Okay. All right, go ahead, no problem. Okay, motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous?
Thank
you. Any other
Aye.
matters? Do we have anything else?
No, I don't. I could just ramble on for
You're
a bit,
good.
but I don't think I have.
Can
Lori,
appreciate that.
Lori, Molly?
I'm not much of a rambler, so I'm
Anybody got
gonna
anything
pass.
else? All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all very much. And we're out of here at 8 o'clock. Wow.
8:31.
Or 8:01, or 8:02, whatever.
There's a line material if anyone wants to see.
Pardon me?
I do.
Oh, you want to see them? Oh, yeah. How about